Magic truly is an uncanny notion. That invisible forces could be conjured and wielded to bring sickness, insanity, infertility, crop failure, and death filled many ancient and many modern people with an intense sense of dread. Of course, this notion also sits uncomfortably next to what is presented as orthodox religion. That magic and religion overlap so much only adds to the sense of the uncanny. Magicians often see themselves as maverick individualists, and religion, capital R religion, often seeks to separate itself from sorcery. Ultimately, it seems that both require and repulse one another. Counter magic, that is, rituals meant to annul the magical attacks of others, is probably only slightly younger than magic itself. From the ubiquitous blue-eyed amulets of the Mediterranean which ward off the evil eye, to the witch bottles filled with urine and nails buried by the cunning folk of Britain, people have long attempted to resist the power of malevolent magic. One of the most elaborate instances of counter magic is also one of the most ancient. In this episode, we turn our attention to ancient Mesopotamia to explore the complex ritual of the Maqlû, which sought to destroy the power of evil by scorching them both in effigy and by the burning rays of the sun god, Shamash. In fact, this episode follows up on my exploration of possession and exorcism in ancient Israel. If you're interested in that, make sure to check out the card above. The Maqlû ritual gives us a fascinating insight into the nature of magic, ritual, and the religion of ancient Mesopotamia. I hope you'll join me as we explore this complex and profound ritual of the ancient Near East. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion. Simply put, the Maqlû, which literally means burning in Akkadian, the language of ancient Mesopotamia following the decline of the Sumerian language, is a complex ritual meant to prevent magical attacks and punish those responsible. Because the victim of the magical attack doesn't know who is in fact responsible, they can't seek out the usual recourse to human courts. Therefore, they turn directly to divine intervention, here pleading to the gods, specifically Shamash, the sun god, to stop the attack and punish those responsible. The name of the ritual, Maqlû, is a reference to the burning power of Shamash's rays in the form of the fierce god of fire and light, Gera, who will incinerate said evil sorcerer. So, before turning to the text and the ritual itself, I want to say something about terminology, specifically about the word witch and witchcraft in this context. The standard literature around the Maqlû usually denotes it as, quote, the witchcraft series Maqlû, and translate the Akkadian terms kashaptu and kishbi as witch and witchcraft, respectively. This reflects a juridical history stemming from the European early modern witch trials, where maleficium, or witchcraft, was understood as inherently evil. However, the terms witch and witchcraft have been reclaimed by modern practitioners as a spirituality having nothing to do with the demented scribbles of demonologists. So in deference and in respect for those that practice witchcraft now, and for whom witch is actually a title of deep ethical and spiritual commitment, I'm going to avoid translating kashaptu and kishbi as witch and witchcraft. In fact, I'm just going to mostly use the Akkadian terms themselves. So for this episode, I'm going to use the term kashaptu and kishbi and the similar terms apeshu and ipeshtu, typically rendered as sorcery or sorceress, to mean something like malevolent magic, and the noun form to mean something like malevolent magic doer person. Though for my Akkadian fans, you'll notice that both terms are in the feminine gender. While the text does mention masculine gendered evil magic doer people, or kashapu, usually rendered as warlock in the English, From time to time, the text overwhelmingly uses the feminine gendered term because, well, misogyny. At any rate, I hope these choices make sense, and I even hope you pick up some Akkadian grammar, because this channel ain't called Esoterica for nothing. As I mentioned a moment ago, the Maqlû is a counter-magic ritual preserved in numerous manuscripts and various scripts, from Old Babylonian to Neo-Assyrian, from both northern and southern Mesopotamia. Thus, all of this really attests to the popularity of this ritual in the area. The ritual occupies an impressive 9 cuneiform tablets, 8 of which contain the counter-magic incantations, with the 9th being the instructions for the overall ritual itself. The ritual is even mentioned in a private letter by the Apishu, or exorcist healer, Nabu Nadin Shumi, to King Esarhaddon in early August of 670 BCE. So we have both the ritual and the incantations and references to the ritual in this ancient literature, which is really just amazing. The ritual appears in a number of manuscripts from the first millennium BCE, and the most important manuscript was recovered from the library of Ashurbanipal, which was destroyed in 612 BCE. While other libraries like the Library of Alexandria and to a lesser degree the Beit al-Hikmah of Baghdad get all the press, the Library of Ashurbanipal is incredibly important. It contained roughly 10,000 texts, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, the creation account of the Enuma Elish, and a ton of other scientific, cultural, literary, and along with thousands of political documents. All I'm saying is that the Library of Ashurbanipal is gonna get its own episode at some point. It's so unknown, it's practically esoteric despite being so important. The Maqlû ritual itself was performed in the month of Abu, which is roughly cognate to the Hebrew month of Av, and falls sometime around July or August, for individuals that felt that they were victims of malevolent magic. Indeed, this period of the year was thought to be especially prone to supernatural evil, as the barrier between this world and the underworld was thought thin. Perhaps I think an analogy could be made to Halloween or Samhain here. The Maqlû was carried out by an ashipu, or ritual expert. This often gets translated as an exorcist, over the course of the night, with the final parts of the ritual taking place in the early morning. Originally, it appears that the Maqlû itself was a shorter ritual of about 10 incantations that took place during the day, in fact, but at some point it got moved and greatly expanded to an overnight performance. This shift also leads to some confusion in the text about just what gods are doing what, but let's not get bogged down about that. And indeed, it was the breakthrough of Tzvi Abusch who realized that the Maqlû was actually one highly complex ritual, as opposed to previous thinking that it was just a bunch of motley thrown together ancient incantations. To get a handle on the Maqlû, let's focus on the earlier, shorter version, because in some sense the longer, standard version basically expands upon that core text. So the ceremony begins with the victim of evil magic invoking the judge and sun god Shamash to judge and punish the perpetrators of said evil magic, and by pointing to various figurines in accusation of various forms of that malevolent magic. Here, Nuska, a Sumerian god of fire and light, very similar to Gira actually, is asked to protect the victim from further attacks. The sun god is also involved by setting a stalk alight that will be used to burn the now bound and judged Kashaptu in the form of the figurines. After the victim gets justice by Shamash, the sun god, and is further protected by Nuska, the punishment is carried out by the victim with the burning of the various figurines. With the Kashaptu destroyed, their Kishpi, or evil magic, must be undone. This is accomplished by tying and then untying 3 knots in a band, and finally casting the whole band into the flames. Flour is then thrown into the fire to represent the blazing glory of Shamash and Nuska/Gira. It must have been quite a show with that flour burning violently. To seal both the punishment and the breaking of the magical power over the victim, the fire is then stirred with a branch of ash. Spring water is then poured over the fire, invoking the primordial god Ea. and to prevent the Kashaptu from returning as a kind of evil ghost, a symbolic mountain in the form of a stone was placed over the extinguished fire, and a final exorcism ritual is placed upon the ghost of the Kashaptu, thus trapping them in the underworld on the authority of such luminaries as Shamash, Ea, Asoluchi, and Gira the executioner. Of course, all of these ritual actions are accompanied by a series of Akkadian incantations, which are truly exhaustive and marked by repetitions, which would very likely produce a trance-like, dreamy environment while the exorcism was going on. The longer version is, as you might imagine, even more complex. It's 10 times as long. The standard long version of the Maqlû can be divided into 3 sections. The first is a cycle of burning and dousing or drowning the Kashaptu. The second centers on protecting the victim and their home through a series of ritual fumigations and massages. And the third is a series of ritual washings which seal and further protect the victim. As I mentioned earlier, the short ritual was performed originally during the day, while the longer standard version of the Maqlû is moved to an overnight ritual which is completed in the first hours of dawn. The ritual objects are also greatly complicated. From the simple clay figurines of the short ritual, there are now various kinds of figurines of wood, dough, bitumen, clay, tallow made with floor sweepings, and wax. And in fact, various kinds of wood are involved here as well. Further, the Kashaptu is not only burned in this ritual, but also drowned. Of course, the infamous water ordeal, later known in Europe as, quote, swimming the witch, is in fact known from the Hammurabi Code, Law 2, where we read, Shuma awilim kishbi, ili awilim idima, la uktinshu sha elishu, kishbunadu, ana id ilak, id ishalama. If anyone bring an accusation of evil magic against a man, and the accused go into the river and leap into that river, if he sinks in the river, his accuser shall take possession of his house. Ouch. But if the river proves the accused is not guilty and he escapes unhurt, then he who has brought this accusation shall be put to death. Even more ouch. While he who leaped into the river shall take possession of the house that had belonged to the accuser. It's worth noting that while the Maqlû ritual itself primarily imagines women to be the perpetrators of evil magic, the Hammurabi Code places that accusation primarily on men. The longer standard version of the Maqlû is also marked by the introduction of various types of fumigations. Specifically, the ritual calls for the burning of the kukru, a plant whose identity isn't quite known, along with sulfur and salt. The use of sulfur here is keen because it was also a major part of exorcisms not only in ancient Mesopotamia, but it also appears later in the Greek magical papyri and was even being used in Jewish exorcisms as late as the 16th century of the Common Era. If you're interested in the history of exorcism in ancient Israel and Kabbalah, you may want to take a look at the card above. The pungent spice asafoetida was also featured prominently in the ritual, specifically in the binding of the victim's home. And finally, in the longer version, a series of oil massages and ritual washings further cure the victim from the power of the Kashaptu. And as the dawn broke, the malevolent power of the magic reverses upon the Kashaptu, and the victim's hands are washed a final time, and the power of Ea, Shamash, and Marduk finally invoke to seal that deal. Of course, this ritual is incredibly complex and developed over the course of at least a millennium, and my summary here is absolutely no substitute for carefully looking it over. The Maqlû ritual, especially in its long form, was a profound, dramatic ritual operation involving an impressive array of sensory experiences. It must have been truly impressive to have undergone, and no doubt provided the victim with a profound sense of catharsis. Indeed, we are so lucky that such a detailed, profound, and popular ritual has survived from nearly 3,000 years ago. Of course, anyone interested in magic, either in theory, history, or practice, should certainly take the time to study it in depth. Indeed, it'd be really neat for experts to recreate the ritual, in Akkadian, of course, and This would be a cool example of forensic magic archaeology, where maybe ceremonial practitioners, archaeologists, Assyriologists, and historians could work together to reproduce something of what this ritual must have been like. That would be so incredible. If you're interested in the history of ancient magic and the occult, make sure to subscribe here to Esoterica. I mean, we're called Esoterica for a reason. And also, if you want to support my work of producing scholarly, accessible, and free content and topics on esotericism, consider supporting my work on Patreon or with a one-time donation. Your support makes this channel possible, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. If you really want to dive into the Maqlû ritual, the best text is Zvi Abusch's edition of the ritual itself. He provides an incredibly close analysis of the text and its development over time, and further he also includes a normalized version of the original Akkadian with both linguistic and textual notes, which, my God, the geek level of that stuff is so good. It's certainly required reading for anyone interested in ancient magic. And I'll also say that all of Professor Abusch's work on Mesopotamian magic is incredible. Sadly, it's published by Brill. If you're interested in ancient Mesopotamian religion more generally, I would probably start by consulting Jacobsen's The Treasures of Darkness. For some reason, there is a ton of rubbish ideas about the ancient peoples of this region, especially the Sumerians for whatever reason, and this pervasive nonsense about the Anunnaki. That stuff is pure cringe, friends. But this text really is a solid introduction. These ancient peoples deserve our respect through careful and historically accurate analysis, and not by using them as grist for the mill of some weird conspiracy theory about Planet X or something. I don't know. Until next time, I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and you've been watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane side of history, philosophy, and religion.